They say you can feel it in your chest before you understand it with your head, that gut instinct when something isn't right. I used to ignore mine, brushing it off as insecurity or worse, jealousy. But looking back, that night was the moment I stopped lying to myself. Amy had been distant for a while, but not in a way I could point at directly. It wasn't like we were fighting or that she was cold. In fact, she'd been oddly cheerful, performing happiness in a way that felt a little too polished. Smiling more, making plans with people I'd never met, laughing at texts that she never showed me. I wanted to believe it was just stress, that work had her spinning, but deep down, I knew something had shifted. That Friday night, she had a work event downtown. I remember the way she mentioned it offhandedly while rinsing out her coffee mug earlier that morning. "It's just a little corporate mixer," she said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear without looking at me. "You don't have to come. Honestly, you'd be bored out of your mind." She said it like a joke. A casual, dismissive little laugh followed, the kind she used when she didn't want me to ask questions. Something about the way she avoided my eyes made me pause. But I didn't say anything. I just nodded, gave her a kiss on the temple, and headed to work, trying to push the unease out of my head. But it stayed. By the time the afternoon rolled around, I had made up my mind. I told myself I was just going to stop by, say hello, be the supportive husband. I wasn't going to make a big deal out of it. I wasn't even going to let her see me if I could help it. I just needed to. I don't know. See for myself. The event was being held at a rooftop restaurant in the center of the city, one of those trendy places that used to an asterisk midate me when we first moved here. Warm string lights zigzagged overhead, casting everything in a soft golden hue. You could hear jazz humming through the speakers, the clinking of glasses, laughter that felt rehearsed. I scanned the room through the wide glass entrance. At first, I didn't see her. Then I did. She was on the terrace outside, standing with her back partially to me. Even from that distance, I could tell she looked different. Her posture was loose, almost flirtatious. She was wearing a black dress I hadn't seen before, low-cut in the back, clinging in all the places that turned heads. And next to her, leaning just a little too close, was a man I definitely didn't know. He was taller than me. Dark hair cropped close to his scalp. Broad shoulders under a tailored button-down. But what caught my attention, what froze me in place, was the tattoo on his neck. A bold, twisting design, black ink crawling just up to his jawline. The kind of ink you can't exactly hide with a collar. His hand rested on her waist, not possessive, not inappropriate, but familiar. An asterisk made in that low-key, practiced way. They looked like a couple. A real couple. And then they hugged. It wasn't a quick greeting hug. It lingered. She closed her eyes, just for a second, and I swear she smiled. When they pulled apart, they looked around casually like kids sneaking off during school hours. And then they slipped out through a side gate that led down a metal stairwell. I stood there frozen, one hand on the door, the other clenched into a tight fist in my jacket pocket. A server brushed past me and mumbled a polite, "Excuse me," but it sounded far away. Like everything else in that moment. I didn't go in. I didn't follow. I just stood there for what felt like forever, staring at the empty space where she'd just been. 1,000 thoughts ran through my mind, none of them complete. Was this the first time? Was it just flirting? Was I losing it? But deep down, I already knew. I drove home in silence, gripping the steering wheel hard enough that my hands went numb. I turned the radio off halfway through the drive, couldn't stand the noise. I wasn't angry yet. That would come later. I was just numb. Hollowed out. She didn't get home until after midnight. I was sitting on the couch, lights off, pretending to scroll my phone. When I heard the key in the lock, I kept my expression neutral. The door opened and there she was, glowing in that artificial way, like she'd come back from a place she shouldn't have been. She kicked off her heels and sighed as she stepped inside. "Long night," she said, stretching her arms over her head. Networking always drags on. I didn't say anything. I just watched her. She didn't notice at first. She walked into the kitchen, poured herself a glass of water, leaned against the counter. "Some of the new hires are cool," she continued, her voice light. "But God, the speeches were endless. You would have hated it." It was then that I saw it. As she lifted her hair to tie it up, an unconscious movement, the neckline of her dress shifted just enough for me to see the faint red scratch on the side of her neck. Thin. Fresh. Too high to be from a necklace, too clean to be from anything accidental. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She didn't flinch. Instead, she picked it up and flipped it face down without looking. The screen was dark. Silent mode. I forced my voice to work. "Everything okay?" She looked up, eyes wide, smile instantly returning to her lips. "Of course. Just tired." "Oh, you probably saw me talking to someone outside, right?" I nodded. I didn't say how long I saw her. I didn't say what I saw. I just nodded. He's an old friend, she said quickly, too quickly. Total surprise seeing him there. We were catching up. You probably just misread the moment. Her confidence was impressive. Controlled. She even gave a little laugh, like the idea that something suspicious had happened was almost funny. But her voice had a hitch in it. Just a half-second crack. I didn't push. Not that night. I just said okay and let the silence do the talking. She went upstairs not long after that. I sat there on the couch, staring at nothing, my thoughts loud in the quiet room. And that's when the anger came. It wasn't rage, not the kind that makes you break things. It was cold. Dense. The kind of anger that buries itself deep and makes you question everything. Because the worst part wasn't the scratch. Or the silent phone. Or even the lie. It was how natural it all seemed to her. Like she'd done this before. Like this wasn't the first time I had been erased. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake listening to the faint hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of the floorboards, like the house itself was holding its breath with me. Amy was upstairs, in our bed. I couldn't bring myself to join her. Not after what I saw. Not after what she said or what she didn't say. I kept going over her words in my head, just a friend. You misread it. And every time it sounded more hollow. More rehearsed. That's when the rewind started. You know the thing your brain does after something traumatic? It starts digging, turning over every memory like rocks in a riverbed, hoping to find something it missed before. But all I found were signs. Little moments I had dismissed, rebranded as normal, as harmless. Like how she started going to the gym 5 days a week out of nowhere. Amy had never been obsessed with fitness. We both used to laugh about how we preferred happy hour to cardio. Then one day she bought a new set of workout clothes, downloaded a meal prep app and just shifted. I want to feel strong, she had said. Nothing wrong with taking care of myself, right? Of course not. I even supported it. I'd tell her she looked amazing. But now I wonder, was it really for her? Or for someone else's eyes? Then there were the meetings. So many meetings. Random calls with clients at 9 p.m., sudden team outings on weeknights. One night, she told me she had to go over a quarterly report and locked herself in the office for hours. When I brought her a cup of tea, the door didn't open. She just thanked me through the wall. That same night, I noticed she had changed her laptop password. It used to be the name of our dog. She hadn't mentioned changing it. Another time, I walked by her car as she pulled into the driveway and noticed a faint scent, cologne, but not mine. Not even close. I recognized it, though. It was that expensive, spicy kind you smell in department stores. The kind worn by guys who care a little too much about image. When I asked about it, she shrugged. Oh, probably just from the office. You know how close the elevators get. That answer again. So neat. So ready. I'd hear her phone buzz when she was in the shower. She'd leave it face down on the nightstand every time, like a ritual. Sometimes she'd walk into the backyard to take a call, pacing like she needed space. Once or twice, I caught her hanging up the moment I walked out there, followed by a quick, oh, just work stuff. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. Because believing her meant I didn't have to question the life we'd built. The vacations, the stupid inside jokes, the Sunday morning coffee runs. But the thing about doubt is once it sets in, it multiplies. You start noticing the way someone doesn't meet your eyes as much. The way they get defensive over small questions. The silence after they say, I love you, as if they're waiting for you to say it back first. I remember one night when we were watching TV and I reached out to rest my hand on her leg, something simple, something instinctive. She flinched. Just a little. Just enough. Sorry, she said quickly. I thought you were grabbing the blanket. I laughed it off. But I remembered it. Because that's what happens when your world starts shifting beneath your feet, you remember every crack in the ground. Another time, she told me her boss was pressuring her to lead a new client project and that she might need to travel more often. At the time, I congratulated her. I told her how proud I was. I didn't even question it. I was too busy trying to be a supportive husband to see that she was laying down cover stories. And maybe that's what hurts the most, how easily I believed it all. How willingly I filled in the gaps for her. I started looking back at photos on my phone. Us on our anniversary last year, her smile a little too forced, her body angled slightly away from me. A video I took while she made pancakes one Sunday, she looked over her shoulder, smiled, and then checked her phone while I turned the camera off. One night, about a month before the rooftop event, we were lying in bed and I asked her, half joking, you still love me, right? She didn't say yes right away. She laughed. What kind of question is that? Just checking, I said. Of course, she replied eventually. But the pause was longer than it should have been. And now, with the image of that hug seared into my brain, the way she let that man hold her like it was normal, all of those little red flags came back at once. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was a pattern. But I still hadn't said anything. I was stuck in that in-between space where you know something's wrong but haven't built the courage to face it head-on. I told myself I needed proof. That confronting her without hard evidence would just give her more room to lie. I'd seen it happen to friends. Gaslighting, misdirection, guilt trips. I didn't want to become another cautionary tale. So I stayed quiet. But inside I was keeping track of everything. Her comings and goings. The way she'd dress up more than usual on days when she claimed she'd just be in meetings. The way her texts would suddenly get shorter if I asked about her plans. The fact that she started going to bed before me, which had never been her habit. She was creating distance slowly, methodically. And I was watching it happen in real time, powerless to stop it. And the worst part? I still wanted to be wrong. I still hoped I'd misread it all. That I was the one seeing ghosts. That maybe she really was reconnecting with an old friend. That maybe the scratch was from her necklace after all. That maybe, just maybe, we were still okay. But deep down, I knew better. Deep down, I was already mourning something I hadn't even buried yet. By the third day after the event, the weight of pretending was starting to crush me. I went through the motions. Showered. Went to work. Answered emails. But everything felt hollow. Like I was floating through someone else's life while mine sat behind glass, unreachable. At night, Amy still kissed me on the cheek like nothing was wrong. She still asked how my day went. She still wore that same smile that used to feel like home and now felt like camouflage. And I played along. That was the worst part. I didn't confront her. I didn't demand answers. I smiled. I nodded. I helped her load the dishwasher and made her coffee in the morning. I was playing a role in my own marriage, afraid that if I dropped the mask, the whole thing would shatter. But something inside me had shifted. I wasn't just watching anymore, I was searching. Quietly. Intentionally. That Wednesday, I made a decision I still don't know how to feel about. I told myself I was just going to swing by her office area around lunchtime. Nothing suspicious. Just a spontaneous visit. Maybe bring her a coffee. See her in her element. I knew the building, a sleek, modern glass box in the heart of the business district. I'd only been there once before for her holiday party. She always said it wasn't exciting, that her office was boring and full of dry spreadsheets. But that day, I wasn't interested in the spreadsheets. I parked a block away and waited. At first, I felt ridiculous, like some cliché from a bad soap opera. But then I saw her. Amy walked out through the front doors a little before noon. She wasn't alone. There he was, tattoo neck. I hadn't seen his face clearly that night at the event, but there was no mistaking the neck tattoo, the sleeves rolled halfway up his arms, the casual confidence in his stride. He walked beside her like he'd done it 100 times. They crossed the street together, her hand brushing lightly against his arm as they laughed about something I couldn't hear. She looked lighter than she had in weeks. Genuinely relaxed. Happy. They headed to a small cafe on the corner, one of those tucked-away spots with ivy crawling up the brick walls and vintage lettering on the windows. I parked across the street and stayed in my car, eyes locked on them through the glass. She chose the corner booth. He sat across from her, but their bodies leaned toward each other like magnets. The table was small, but the space between them was smaller. Amy reached forward and placed her hand gently on his chest mid-sentence, laughing. He didn't flinch. He smiled and leaned in and kissed her. There was no hesitation. No looking around. No guilt. Just a natural, smooth kiss, the kind you don't give someone you're unsure about. The kind you give someone you've kissed before. Someone you've missed. My world stopped. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I sat behind that windshield like a statue, cold hands gripping the wheel, watching my wife kiss another man like it was the most natural thing in the world. It wasn't a flirt. It wasn't a heat-of-the-moment impulse. It was a habit. And just like that, I wasn't confused anymore. I wasn't paranoid or overthinking or filling in blanks. I wasn't chasing ghosts or misreading signals. I knew. I wasn't the kind of person to cry easily, but in that moment I felt something break loose, a sadness so sharp it almost doubled me over. Not just because of the kiss, but because of what it confirmed. It meant all of it had been real, the lies, the secrecy, the strange distance, the false smiles. It wasn't a theory anymore. It was fact. My wife was in love with someone else. I didn't follow them. I didn't storm inside. There was no confrontation. No yelling. Just me sitting in a parked car across from the wreckage of my marriage. I think that was the most painful part. Not the betrayal, but the calmness of it all. How natural it seemed. Like I'd been written out of the script long ago and was only just now noticing the credits had rolled. I sat there until they left. They didn't hold hands when they exited, probably conscious of the public setting. But they lingered outside for a while. He said something that made her smile. She reached up to adjust his collar, and for a second I saw the way she looked at him. It wasn't casual. She used to look at me like that. After they walked off together, I drove home in silence. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even think. I just drove. And by the time I pulled into our driveway, I had made my decision. The second I stepped inside, I grabbed a pad of paper and started making a list, not of reasons, not of arguments, but of things that needed to go. Her things. I walked through the house like a stranger, collecting pieces of a life that no longer felt like mine. Her extra phone charger by the bed, the books she always left on the coffee table, the cardigan draped over the back of the dining chair. I didn't pack with anger. I packed with clarity. Methodical. Measured. Like closing out a project that had long since run over budget. That night I changed the locks. Not out of spite. Not even out of vengeance. Out of finality. She texted around 10:30 p.m., running late. Don't wait up. I didn't respond. Just after midnight, I heard the rattle of her key in the front door. Then silence. Then the soft knock. Jason, she called. Something's wrong with my key. I didn't move. I sat in the hallway just out of view, watching her silhouette through the frosted glass. Another knock. Then a pause. Then the sound of her phone dialing. I watched my phone light up from the floor where I'd left it. I didn't answer. She stood there for a while. Long enough that I started to wonder if she'd break down the door or scream or cry. But she didn't. Eventually, I heard her footsteps retreat. The click of heels down the walkway. And then nothing. The house was quiet again. But it wasn't the same silence as before. This one felt earned. It felt like a door that had been slowly closing for months, finally shut. The next morning, I woke up to a house that didn't feel like mine. It wasn't anything obvious. The furniture was the same. The coffee maker still sputtered to life at 7 a.m. The light still crept in through the blinds the way it always had. But something was missing, something invisible but heavy, like air that had been *ked out of the walls. I didn't turn on the TV. Didn't check my phone. I just sat in the kitchen staring at the counter where Amy's mug used to sit. Every morning for the last 3 years, I'd see that pale blue mug with the chipped handle and a lipstick smudge on the rim. Today, it was gone. Because I had packed it. The boxes were still in the garage. I hadn't labeled them, didn't need to. They were hers. Clothes, shoes, books, some framed photos, the scented candles she always lit during storms. I packed it all carefully, without rage, wrapping each item in old t-shirts and towels like I was protecting something fragile. Funny, right? How we still protect the people who destroy us. I didn't leave a note. I didn't have anything left to say. Words had been used up. And besides, she had spent enough time talking in half-truths, I didn't owe her a single sentence. When I stepped into the garage that morning and saw the boxes stacked neatly against the far wall, I felt nothing. Not satisfaction. Not sorrow. Just a dull ache, like pressing a bruise that had stopped hurting but still reminded you it was there. She texted again that afternoon. Then again in the evening. The messages were short. Can we talk? Please answer. I'm outside. I didn't reply. At around 10 p.m. I heard her car pull up. I didn't look out the window. I didn't need to. I knew that sound too well, the soft crunch of the tires against gravel, the idle engine, the slam of the door. She rang the bell once. Then again. And then she knocked. That slow, deliberate knock, the one she used when her hands were full and she needed me to open the door. But I didn't move. From the hallway, I could see her silhouette through the frosted glass. She leaned in close, maybe trying to peek inside. Then her phone buzzed in my pocket again. I stayed still. The house was dark except for the faint glow of a hallway lamp. I watched her through the peephole, her eyes wide, scanning, searching. She pulled her coat tighter like the night had finally realized she didn't belong here anymore. Then she sat down on the step. Cross-legged. Like a kid waiting for their parent to forgive them. Part of me wondered what she thought would happen. That I'd open the door with open arms? That we'd collapse into a hug and pretend the last few weeks, hell, the last few months, hadn't been real? She stayed out there for almost 20 minutes. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just sat. At one point, she pulled out her phone and scrolled. Maybe texting him. Maybe deleting him. Eventually, she stood up and walked away. Her footsteps were slow. Almost reluctant. The kind of steps you take when you know you've already lost, but part of you still hopes there's a door left open somewhere. There wasn't. Not this time. After she left, I finally moved. I walked through the house slowly, room by room. Not looking for anything, just feeling. The guest room still had the extra set of sheets we used when her sister visited last fall. The living room still smelled faintly of the citrus spray she liked. The upstairs hallway still had the scuff mark from when we moved in the dresser and misjudged the corner. The ghosts weren't gone. Not yet. I found myself standing in my bedroom. The bed was made, pillows fluffed the way she liked, blankets pulled tight. I sat down on her side. It still held her shape, like the mattress hadn't figured out she wasn't coming back. On the nightstand there was a paperback she had been reading. I picked it up, flipped to the marked page, and read the last highlighted sentence. "You don't lose someone all at once. You lose them in pieces." She had underlined it in pencil. I placed the book in one of the garage boxes the next morning. Throughout that week, I didn't speak to her. I didn't respond to her texts or voicemails. I didn't tell anyone what had happened. Not yet. I wasn't ready for the questions, the sympathy, the analysis. People always want to help. They say things like, maybe there's more to the story, or you two should talk it out. But they didn't see the way she looked at him. They didn't stand in that cafe watching their future being written while mine was erased. Silence became my language. It was the only thing that felt honest. I started walking in the evenings. Not for fitness, just to move. I'd circle the block a few times, sometimes with my hands in my pockets, sometimes gripping the sleeve of my jacket like a lifeline. Once I passed by the wine bar she liked, the one with the string lights outside and the happy hour she always raved about. Through the window, I saw a couple laughing at a high-top table. They looked new, nervous but excited. He touched her hand across the table and she leaned in. I couldn't look away. Not because I missed her, but because I missed the beginning. The effort, the belief. It made me wonder when we stopped trying. Was it after year 5? After she changed jobs? After we both got too comfortable? Or was she always halfway out the door and I just never noticed? One night, I came home from a walk and found another envelope slipped under the front door. No name on the outside. Just a folded piece of paper inside with her handwriting. It read, "I don't know how to fix this. I know I broke it. I'm sorry for lying. I'm sorry for all of it. I never stopped loving you. I hope someday you can forgive me. Ah." I folded the note in half and placed it in the bottom drawer of the desk in the spare room. Not out of sentimentality. Just because I couldn't throw it away yet. Forgiveness isn't a decision you make in a moment. It's something that either grows in the silence or doesn't. For now, silence was enough. It had been a few days since Amy sat on our front step like a stranger hoping for a second chance. Since then, the silence between us had only grown louder. I didn't hear from her the next day. Or the day after that. No knocks. No envelopes. Just a thick, buzzing quiet that clung to the walls of the house like fog. I started telling people small pieces of the story. Not everything. Not the cafe. Not the kiss. Not the scratch I can't unsee. Just the broad strokes that Amy had made some decisions and that we were figuring things out separately. Most people didn't push. A few offered sympathy I didn't know what to do with. But I kept my answers short. Polite. Emotionless. There was only one person who reacted differently. Tessa, Amy's friend. They had worked together years ago at a nonprofit and stayed close ever since. I never knew her well, our conversations rarely went deeper than book recommendations or vacation photos. But she showed up at my door 3 days after Amy's last message unannounced. I opened it to find her standing on the porch, holding a half-full iced coffee and looking like she hadn't slept. Her eyes flicked up to mine and softened. "Hey," she said. "Hey," I replied cautiously. "Everything okay?" She hesitated. "Can I come in?" I nodded and stepped aside. We sat in the living room. I didn't offer her anything. She didn't ask. "I don't want to take sides," she said, hands curled around her cup. "I'm not here to dump drama on you. But I can't keep my mouth shut anymore." I raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Just waited. She looked down at the coffee. Then back at me. "I thought you deserved to know the truth. The full truth." A long pause. And then, like a faucet finally giving in, the words poured out. According to Tessa, the affair, or whatever Amy was calling it, wasn't sudden. It wasn't the result of one bad night or a moment of weakness. It was calculated. Built brick by brick over months. She started talking about him in January, Tessa said, her voice low. At first, it was just in passing. A guy from the new project team. Then she started. "I don't know. Romanticizing things." I clenched my jaw. "She told us," Tessa continued, "that she felt trapped. That you were holding her back. That she wasn't allowed to grow. That hit me harder than I expected. She said she'd spent too many years trying to make you happy and had forgotten who she was." I wanted to laugh. Or maybe scream. Because while I was planning anniversary dinners and fixing her broken phone screen and picking up her prescriptions, she was telling people I was her prison. She told us she wasn't sure she believed in marriage anymore, Tessa said softly. That she deserved more. That she deserved better. I looked away. She was already pulling away before that event, Jason, she said. The night you saw them at the restaurant? That wasn't the first time. Not even close. I felt my throat close up. Did you know? I asked. About him. She looked ashamed. Not exactly. I had suspicions. Amy was never open about who he really was, just a friend from work. But we knew something was off. And when I saw her wearing that necklace, the one she said you bought her, she shook her head. She told me it was from him. I didn't even know about a necklace. Tessa let out a slow breath and leaned back against the couch. I'm not here to defend her. I just needed you to know she was rewriting the story long before any of this came to light. I nodded slowly. Why now? Why tell me this? Because she's not being honest with you. And because I couldn't stand watching her paint herself as the victim while you're the one bleeding. That silence returned again, heavy, familiar. She stood. I'm sorry. I know this doesn't make anything easier. But you deserve to know the kind of truth she won't say out loud. I walked her to the door. She paused before stepping out and looked back one last time. She always said you were too good for her. Back when things were actually good between you two. Funny how people forget their own words. She left and I stood there in the doorway for a long time. After she was gone, I sat at the kitchen table, hands resting flat on the wood. I stared at nothing. My mind replayed what I just heard, the lies Amy had woven behind my back, the stories she'd sold to people I barely knew. She had been preparing for her exit. Framing it. Framing me. Like a real estate agent staging a home before the owners even knew it was on the market. And somehow that hurt almost more than the kiss. The premeditation. The rewriting of our story before it was even over. I walked out to the garage and opened the lid on one of the boxes. Just stared. Inside, a copy of The Alchemist, a sweater I used to borrow when she wasn't looking, an old Polaroid of us on vacation, sunburned, happy, stupid in love. I closed the box gently. No rage. No tears. Just a cold, clear understanding. The person I loved had become someone else. And I didn't recognize the woman she'd turned into. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to Amy's contact, and hit block. It felt small. Petty, maybe? But it was a boundary. A line I needed to draw, not for her, but for me. I wasn't going to let her rewrite the ending. Not in her words. Not in her voice. Not anymore. When we sat across from each other in the lawyer's office, Amy looked like a stranger in a blazer. Calm. Polished. Like this was just another meeting on her calendar. She asked for her share of the house, half the car's value, and access to our investment account like she hadn't detonated everything. I didn't speak. I let my lawyer slide the photos across the table, the cafe, the kiss, the messages she sent her friend. He still has no idea. I feel a little bad, but I won't stop. Amy blinked once. Didn't flinch. Didn't apologize. She just glanced at the papers and said, "Can we move this along?" That was the moment I realized there was no guilt. Only strategy. A week later, she showed up at my office. No makeup. No heels. Just a tired woman in yesterday's clothes. She didn't ask to come back. She said the guy had left her. It all went wrong. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed. She looked around like she didn't recognize the place. Or maybe she didn't recognize me anymore. I didn't say much, just stepped aside, letting her see the office, the life she no longer belonged to. She walked out without another word. I left the door open behind her, not as an invitation, but as closure. She had walked out of my life long before she